discuss this a very important topic of diabetes ketoacidosis. This topic is important for final year MBBS students, for MD medicine residents, as well as for a general practitioner. So diabetes ketoacidosis, first we will identify the symptoms. So the symptoms of diabetes ketoacidosis are nausea, vomiting, thirst, increased thirst, and polyuria. That is because of hyperglycemia. Patient will have abdominal pain and shortness of breath. Shortness of breath will be because of metabolic acidosis, which triggers the respiratory centers. Now the signs, physical examination, patient will have tachycardia. That is because of the hypovolemia, sympathetic activity is increased. Dehydration, hypotension will be there because of volume loss. Patient will have Kussmaul respiration. Again, this is due to low pH, blood pH, triggering the respiratory centers, causing increased depth and rate of breathing, known as Kussmaul respiration. Abdominal tenderness can be there, and it can mimic acute pancreatitis. Lethargy will be there, mainly because of hyperglycemia and hyponatremia, which occur in these patients. Now the lab test. So plasma glucose for diagnosis of diabetes ketoacidosis is more than 250. Usually it is 250 to 600. Serum sodium will be slightly on a lower side. The reason for a low serum sodium is because of the hyperglycemia. Water shift occur from the cells into the blood. So there is a sort of a dilutional hyponatremia, and the equation is for every 100 milligram per deciliter increase in the blood glucose level from normal value, serum sodium falls by 1.6 millimoles per liter. So higher the blood glucose level, lower will be serum sodium. Potassium can be normal in the blood, or it can be slightly on a higher side. This is a very important parameter to be assessed. We'll discuss this later on. Plasma osmolality will be 300 to 320. Beta hydroxybutyrate is the main ketone body which is present here, and it is more than 2.5 millimoles per liter. Remember, this is the criteria, essential criteria for diabetes ketoacidosis. Serum ketone should be positive. Urine ketone can be positive, but the urine ketone is more convenient. So therefore, you must have seen in the word that we do urine ketones frequently, but urine ketone appear late in the diabetes ketoacidosis, and they disappear late even after the discovery, even after the recovery. They will be present in the urine, so they are not so reliable as compared with serum beta hydroxybutyrate. Only they are convenient, therefore we go for urine ketones levels. Bicarbonate less than 15 usually, pH, arterial pH 7.3, and anion gap will be higher, that will be high. Now, management. The most important management is IV fluid. Reason being, the most common cause of death or predominant cause of death in diabetes ketoacidosis is dehydration, and it is usually 5 to 6 liters of fluid deficit which is present in these individuals. So how the IV fluid should be given? As soon as the patient comes to us, we will give 10 to 20 ml per kg of normal saline over 1 hour, and that will correspond to 1 to 1.5 liters. So you can just remember, in 1 hour 1 liter of fluid will be given. Also, if the child is very lean and thin, then you calculate according to the body weight. Now, if then we will assess after 1 hour. If patient is having severe hypovolemia and in patient is in shock, capillary refill time is prolonged. So in that scenario, we will repeat 1 to 2 liters of fluid again, 1 to 2 liter per hour, depending on the clinical scenario, till patient is stable, till patient is recovered from the shock. And then we will put the patient on 500 ml of normal saline for next 4 hours. If there is a mild to moderate hypovolemia after the initial bolus dose, then go for a 500 ml for 4 hours. Then once patient is euvolumic means ki dehydration is settled, BP is settled, so we will look for serum sodium. If serum sodium is more than 135, so in that scenario, what we do, we shift the patient to half normal saline. So half normal saline will be 0.45% of saline, and 250 to 500 ml per hour we will give. Otherwise, if sodium is more than 135 and we keep on giving normal saline, there can be chances of cerebral edema. If sodium is still low, then we continue with the normal saline 250 to 500 ml per hour. So this is initial treatment protocol for IV fluids, ki how to go about the IV fluids. Then once the blood sugar levels reaches 250, then we change IV fluid to 5% glucose with half normal saline or ringer lactate, and the rate will be 150 to 250 ml per hour. So we give 5% glucose because we want to prevent the starvation, and 0.45% saline by V shift because we want to prevent the cerebral edema development. So they will be started as soon as the blood glucose reaches 250 or below 250. Now continue IV fluids. So till what time these IV fluid will be given? So this will be given until the resolution of DKA. Now what is the meaning of resolution of the DKA? So usually it takes 12 to 24 hours for the resolution of the DKF with proper management. Plasma glucose is less than 200 mg per deciliter. Any one of two criteria should be positive. These criteria are bicarbonate more than 15, pH more than 7.3, and anion gap less than 12. So any of the two criteria plus plasma glucose of less than 200 means resolution of DKA. So we will stop the and patient is able to accept orally. So we stop IV fluids at that time. Now insulin. So insulin is given regular insulin or ultra short acting insulin. So it is given IV stat 0.1 units per kg IV stat. So some of the guidelines says ki instead of IV stat you can straight away start with the infusion, so no need for the IV stat. Some guidelines says that also, but giving IV stat is not contraindicated as such. So then it is followed by 0.1 units per kg per hour of infusion, and when we are not giving the IV stat, then this rate of infusion that we start with is 0.14 units per kg per hour. And we will monitor the sugars, and if the blood glucose does not decrease by 10% in 1 hour, so suppose if patient initial presentation was 500 of blood glucose, after 1 hour we should expect ki it should decrease by 50 milligram per deciliter, 10% it should decrease in 1 hour. But if that is not achieved, glucose is not decreased by 10% in 1 hour, then we increase the infusion by plus 1 units per hour. Suppose for example, if patient was 50 kgs, so initial infusion rate will be 5 units per hour infusion will be there if patient is 50 kgs. If glucose is not reducing by 10% in 1 hour, then what we will do, we'll increase the infusion by 1, means ki 5 plus 6 means 5 plus 1 units we will do. So total of 6 units per hour insulin will be going. So this we keep on titrating the dose of the infusion. And once the glucose levels become less than 200, then we will reduce the infusion rate to 0.02 to 0.05 units per kg per hour, and we will add 5% dextrose in the IV fluids to prevent starvation. And our target glucose will be 150 to 200. Now, if the initial serum potassium is less than 3.3, so we will not administer the insulin until the potassium is corrected, because what will happen if we give insulin cause intracellular shifting of the potassium, so potassium can decrease very dangerously. So this potassium is very important before giving the insulin therapy. Now, as soon as the patient start eating, we will start with the subcutaneous insulin. Infusion will be stopped, but there should be an overlap. Like for example, suppose if patient has started accepting orally, we are giving subcutaneous insulin. So even after giving the subcutaneous insulin, we will continue IV infusion for 2 to 4 hours. So we will give a overlap of 2 to 4 hours. Now, how the insulin will be given subcutaneously? We will give 0.5 units per kg per day. That will be divided into 50% of basal dose, that is a long-acting insulin, and 50% of bolus, divided in 3 meals. So, for example, if the patient body weight was, say, for example, 60 kgs, so the total dose will come out to be 30 units. So out of 15 means 50% means 15 units will be given as a basal dose, and 15 units will be given as bolus in 3 divided dose, like 5 units before breakfast, 5 units before lunch, and 5 units before dinner. So it will be divided into 3 meals. Now, potassium replacement, if the initial potassium is more than 5.2, no need for replacement. If it is between 3.5 to 5.2, then 10 millimoles per hour infusion will be given, and when it is less than 3.5, so 40 to 80 millimoles per hour will be given, and target potassium will be between 4 to 5.2. So we should have some target in our mind, that should be the potassium targets. Now, soda bicarb will be given when the pH is less than 7, and the dose is 50 millimoles in 200 ml of sterile water with 3 ml milliequivalents per liter of KCl per hour for the first 2 hours until the pH is 7. So as soon as the pH becomes 7, we will stop the soda bicarb. So why it is not given so frequently? Reason being, these ketone bodies they are in the periphery. So when treatment is being given for DK, those ketone bodies, acetate, beta hydroxybutyrate, they will come to the liver and they convert into bicarbonate. So there is already endogenous source of bicarbonate which is available. So when the pH reaches 7, so automatically pH will become more than 7.3 because of the conversion of these ketone into the bicarbonate. Now the monitoring will be blood glucose will be checked every hourly to decide the rate of the infusion. Potassium should be checked 2 to 4 hourly, or in a dictum is ki whenever 40 milliequivalent potassium has been given to the patient, that time check the potassium levels. ABG every 4 hours, BP, pulse, respiratory rate, mental status, fluid intake, urine output, every hourly it should be monitored. And of course, whatever was the precipitating cause like any infection, it should be treated aggressively. So this was the management of DKA. If you have any questions, you can put in the comment section.